The 30th annual Alaska Native Art Auction, celebrating Indigenous artists and voices, takes place Saturday, March 21st at the Hotel Captain Cook in Anchorage. Information available at knba.org. The Alaska Native Art Auction Gala is March 21st, 2026 in Anchorage, Alaska. Donate artwork by February 27th, 2026 and be eligible to win $500. Help sustain Indigenous-led media, including National Native News. Donor forms and details are found at knba.org.
Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. A cancer diagnosis can be a shock for those on the receiving end. Along with the anxiety and uncertainty about what comes next is also hope. Advancements in modern science are propelling cancer survival rates to an all-time high. Meanwhile, traditional healing practices are increasingly recognized as a source of comfort for many people facing treatment. Today we'll hear from cancer survivors about their healing journeys. That's coming up right after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Jill Freitas sitting in for Antonia Gonzalez. 5 Indigenous mushers and their dog teams are headed to Nome. The 1,000-mile race got underway in Willow, north of Anchorage on Sunday. A fresh blanket of snow covered the trail. 2 of the top contenders in a field of 37 mushers are Alaska Native. Ryan Reddington, an Inupiaq musher from Knik, won the race in 2023. Pete Kaiser, a Yupik from Bethel, took the title in 2019. Kaiser skipped last year's Iditarod and hadn't planned to race this year until 3 weeks ago, following his historic 10th win of the Kuskokwim 300 sled dog race. After Kaiser set the record for winning the most Cusco 300s, he says returning to the Iditarod felt like the right decision.
By the time the Cusco's over, you've done 90% of the work, started training in July, and so I just felt like things were looking okay and felt like going down the trail again, so here we are.
There are 3 Indigenous rookies in the race to watch. Jesse Terry, an Anishinaabe musher from Sioux Lookout, Ontario, is a veteran of several mid-distance races. He's been mushing dogs since he was 11 years old. Another rookie, Kevin Hansen, an Inupiaq from Kotzebue, has been sprint racing since the 3rd grade. He finished second in last year's Kobuk 440, just behind defending Iditarod champ Jesse Holmes. But for Hansen, this race is about more than competition.
Part of who I am as an Inupiaq, and you really feel it out there in times when it's just you, your dogs, and the land, and dealing with the elements and challenges.
This may be Jody Potts Joseph's first Iditarod, but the Hongwichin from Eagle Village is well known. She starred in the TV show Life Below Zero, First Alaskans, and her daughter Kwana Chasing Horse is an Indigenous model, featured in magazines like Vogue. Together, they've been outspoken environmental advocates.
Why mushing out of all the spectrum of things I do? It's because that's really where my heart is. Love the dogs. I love being out on the land with the dogs. It fills my soul, and it just gives me a lot of purpose.
Potts Joseph says it's been a tough training season. Interior Alaska temperatures dropped down to 30 to 65 below this winter, too cold for her dogs to run safely. Her main goal, to finish the Iditarod with a healthy team. The first finishers are expected to cross the finish line next Monday or Tuesday. The federal government is encouraging tribes to partner with data centers. That could mean leasing land or, as the Mountain West News Bureau's Hannah Merzbach reports, selling power.
At a U.S. Department of Energy webinar, Ken Ahman with Colusa Indian Energy said that's where the big bucks come in.
Potentially billions of dollars into the coffers of tribes.
His company provides energy infrastructure to data centers on tribal land. He says these partnerships can be good for tribes that have land and resources to power big projects, like the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. Paul Beemore is the chair of the tribe's utility board.
Tribes that are casino dependent really need to look at other ways to build their economies, and I think that data centers is one of those opportunities.
Though Beemore says people may be wary about how this will impact the environment. Other tribes have expressed concerns about data centers draining precious water supplies. For National Native News, I'm Hannah Mersbach.
I'm Jill Freitas.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Eighth Generation is a Seattle-based lifestyle brand owned by the Snoqualmie tribe, offering authentic native-designed blankets, jewelry, and gifts. More at Reservation Economic Summit booths 805 and 21 and at 8thgeneration.com, who support this show. Tribal Development Partners, supporting tribal sovereignty through 105L leasing and essential infrastructure development. Tribal Development Partners will attend Res 2026 in booth 303 and are proud to support this show.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The good news is the vast majority of people diagnosed with cancer survive past 5 years. The American Cancer Society reports that number because it is a significant milestone for people being treated for most types of cancer. It indicates the likelihood of the disease returning is greatly diminished. Getting to that point for the people who have cancer, though, is often a journey that involves a mix of drug trials, surgeries, spiritual reflection, and weeks and months of treatment. Today, we'll get perspectives from people who know about that battle. We'll hear their stories about overcoming the first shock of diagnosis and encountering the difficulties of healing while working through the usual demands of daily life. As a listener, you are more than welcome to join this conversation. Give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from Middleville, Michigan is Shannon Martin. She is a cancer survivor and she is Gun Lake Potawatomi. Shannon, welcome back to Native America Calling.
Miigwech, Boozhoo Chayak, Wawena Boozhoo, Nindawena Maniduk, Nungo Kwet, and Dishnikas, Bijou and Dodem, Machi Beneshuish Band of Gun Lake Potawatomi, Minwa Lakuta Ray, Lake Superior Ojibwe, and Ishnabe Kwayandao, Wabajozi being Minwa, Salem Indian Settlement in Donjaba, Middle Village, Middleville, Michigan, and Dada. Shaganashi Moen Majima. Miigwech for having me today.
Boozhoo, Shannon, thank you very much. Joining us on Zoom from the Washington, D.C. metro area, we have Jamie Gomez. She is the Tlingit and Haida Foundation Executive Director and an American Indian Cancer Foundation board member. She is a citizen of the Tlingit and Haida tribes. Jamie, welcome to Native America Calling, and feel free to give us a traditional greeting as well.
Ganashti shawa squat yuhaktu asak yek nahatsati sukachari ayahat kagwantan yadi wishkitan dachkan ye hit Ganashtish.
Thank you, Jamie. Also on Zoom in Chandler, Arizona, we have Alicia Mitchell. She is a Partnership for Native American Cancer Prevention board member and an American Indian Cancer Foundation board member, and she's also a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. Alicia, welcome to Native America Calling. Great to have you on the show today.
Wado. Thank you.
Absolutely. And joining us from Anchorage, Alaska, we have Nicole Hallingstad. She is a cancer survivor and advocate and a citizen of the Tlingit and Haida tribes. Good morning, Nicole, and welcome to Native America Calling.
Good morning, and Gunesh Chish for having me on the show. My English name is Nicole Hallingstad. Ta'akla yuchat doasach yech ayachat taktentan nachat seti sakwedi yadi ayachat Norwegian yadi ayachat. And in my introduction, I honor my Norwegian mother and my split killer whale fin father, I was born and raised in Sitka-Kwan in Petersburg, Alaska.
Thank you, Nicole. And I am loving these traditional greetings today on Native America Calling. Love the authenticity of hearing these Native voices speaking Indigenous languages. Shannon, I want to begin with you. Shannon Martin, you have been cancer-free for almost 3 years. How do you reflect on the experience now? And has it changed your emotional or spiritual outlook?
Yes, it has. You know, I guess my message today to anyone out there is to listen to your body. Be familiar with your body. It's the vessel that houses our spirit. And if something doesn't feel right, look right, tell your doctor. And that was the trigger for my story. I had a small lipoma on my left side of my belly, and it scared me because it seemed like it was a hard mass. I didn't know what it was. My wife, Tiger, she's a medical anthropologist. She examined it, and she said it's probably a lipoma. But I wanted to see my doctor, so I scheduled a visit with my PCP, Dr. Rebecca Warner, at the Gun Lake Tribal Health Clinic. And she evaluated me and came to the conclusion that, yes, it was a lipoma, and that if I wanted to, we would begin tracking it. So she ordered a ultrasound. And I went in for the ultrasound on November 21st, 2022. She saw the imagery, and she wasn't pleased with what she was seeing because she couldn't see the depth of it, and she wanted a true look at an evaluation of the whole mass. So she scheduled a CT scan. I went in for my CT scan on December 22nd so that she could have a full measure of the lipoma. And it was through the CT scan that it was discovered I had a neoplasm, suspicious looking, could be malignant mass in my left kidney. It was evaluated by a specialist, and they determined that, yes, it was cancer. It was quite a large mass. And from there, I was sent to a specialist, Dr. Thomas Mottman, and he's a surgical urologist. And I had my first consult with him in January of 2023. It was about a 1.5-hour consult. He put me immediately at ease. He let me know that, unfortunately, I would have to lose my entire left kidney. But my kidney had done the great work of encapsulating the mass. It didn't spread outside of the walls of the kidney. And he said that this would probably most likely be a curative operation where I would have the kidney removed. So I had my surgery on February 21st of 2023. And it was, you know, for those months, it was very scary. But my family took care of me, my wife especially. We had strong faith in our cultural and spiritual beliefs. So I also had a series of traditional healing ceremonies. My sisters and wife danced jingle dress, and my mom and dad had water and tobacco ceremony. They turned the pipe. And then I went to Saginaw Chippewa tribe for an open jingle dress healing ceremony that my older sister, Punkin Shananaquit, conducted. So I participated in that. And then the night before my surgery, again, my wife and my two older sisters put on their jingle dresses and smudged me and gave me a cedar bath. And then the next day, the morning of surgery, my dad and my mom had another tobacco and water ceremony, and it included my surgeon, Dr. Thomas Mottman, and he participated in that. And I had a Da Vinci robotic surgery. It took about, I would say, almost 3 hours, and I stayed in recovery and then stayed at the hospital for another 3 days. So, you know, my cancer survivorship story began there. It's still ongoing as I'm under 5 years of survivorship surveillance. So I go in every year for my CT scans and blood works and, of course, my annuals. But I keep up with my mammograms and my colonoscopy and everything else, just to ensure that I'm doing all that I can with Western medicine to help my life.
Shannon, this is a really inspirational story. Thank you so much for sharing this with our listeners. Now, in addition to some of these cultural elements, the dances, the various traditional healing practices, you've also given a lot of praise to your tribal clinic there with the Gun Lake Potawatomi, and they've even helped with some of your medical expenses. Tell us a little bit more about the medical care you received through your tribe.
Yeah, our Gun Lake Tribe Health and Human Services Department they are stellar. Everyone there is absolutely amazing. They saved my life. They've saved the lives, of my family members. They're responsive, compassionate. They attend, most of our tribal gatherings. But, they have seen me through this and continue to assist and watching over my health and encouraging my good health. And I have to extend my gratitude to my tribal council, because they, let me know you won't have any financial worries. We're going to take care of you. So they purchased, in addition to our normal health insurance plan that they provide for tribal citizens, they purchased an additional plan that would cover my survivorship for 5 years, and it covered all of my surgical and post-surgical expenses.
Cancer survivor from the Gun Lake Potawatomi tribe. She joins us from Middleville, Michigan, and her message is: listen to your body. Pay attention. If you feel different, if you notice a lump or some sort of abnormality, get it checked out. Get it taken care of. She's kicking off our conversation today here on Native America Calling, and we have the phone lines open for other folks who can join the conversation as well. We have 4 guests on the line. All of them are cancer survivors. Maybe you're a cancer survivor too. Maybe you can share some insights into what it takes to get a handle on cancer, the treatment, the diagnosis. Maybe you're familiar with traditional healing practices as well, and maybe they have helped you and your family through your journey with cancer. You can call us. You can let us know. You can join this conversation. The number's 1-800-996-2848. And, of course, we have our social media platforms open as well. Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. In fact, Shannon Martin put a big post on her Facebook page detailing her journey through this cancer experience as well. So don't forget that social media, but of course, we've got the phone lines open for folks who would like to just pick up that phone and give us a call. That's always an option, too. 1-800-99-NATIVE, and we'll be right back. A bill in Congress would fundamentally change how people vote in the upcoming midterm elections. In an effort to prevent the unlikely event that non-citizens cast ballots, the Save America Act could hamper the process for millions of eligible voters. We'll hear about the legislation and what voters should be ready for on the next Native America Calling.
The Alaska Native Art Auction Gala is March 21st, 2026 in Anchorage, Alaska. You can help support the mission to sustain Indigenous-led media as Kowanik Broadcast Corporation uplifts Native voices through programs like National Native News, Native America Calling, and the many other programs you hear on Native Voice One affiliates nationwide. Details can be found at knba.org.
We're glad you're with us today here on Native America Calling while we hear personal accounts of overcoming cancer. People tap into a mix of cutting-edge science and personal healing strategies to confront a disease that disproportionately affects Native American people. Our next guest, Jamie Gomez, is the Tlingit and Haida Foundation Executive Director and an American Indian Cancer Foundation board member. She joins us now from Washington, D.C. And Jamie, you are currently undergoing experimental treatment for ovarian cancer, and this is the third time for you. Do you have any concerns about an experimental form of treatment? And tell us a little bit more about what this treatment is.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I was diagnosed in my mid-30s with late-stage ovarian cancer, and they gave me 5 years. At that time, I had surgery, 2 rounds of what you would think of as traditional chemo, where you lose your hair and the extreme pain and some of those side effects. And it came back a third time uncurable. And I was told it was uncurable. And so the doctors encouraged me to look for a trial. And I looked around at, a number of different locations, and you have to have your cancer has to be advanced enough in some cases to be eligible for the trial. So I was also waiting for my tumor to get large enough, which was a very scary, uncomfortable place to be. And I was lucky. I found a trial over at NIH, which I was a good fit for. And the first trial I tried over there didn't really work. It wasn't a good fit, so we took me off it right away. I got really sick from it, but it did allow me to be in the NIH system. And I was able to be on the trial I'm currently on. And I've been on this trial for over 10 years, so 14 years. It's been 14 years since my original diagnosis. And it's going well. I mean, I'm in remission, and I'm very grateful to be on it. I know trials aren't for everyone, but I am grateful for the opportunity to be on this trial because it keeps me around. I'm still here, and they're very kind to me over there. There was, and some of the things you have to think about, is your information is being saved for research, right? But anything I could do individually that would help others, I was willing to do it because at that point, I had an uncurable diagnosis. So if there's something that I could do that would, help my health, but at the same time help somebody else, I was all for it.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, you wrote a really, really good blog a few years ago in the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition on their website. And you talk about in the midst of all of this and again, being told, hey, 5 years. I mean, I'm just astounded to hear you just describe it now in retrospect, but you worked full time and you and your husband raised 2 boys during your treatment. I mean, how did you balance all this, your health and then just being a mother and a wife?
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without community, right? Love and support from family and friends and coworkers and just even strangers, people that I didn't know in my neighborhood. And we didn't do it alone. During the same time, my husband was also going through medical issues. He was injured in his second deployment, and so coming home from that at the same time that I was diagnosed. So I had friends from town would take me to treatments. My mother would come to treatment. My sister would fly in from Alaska to help take care of the boys and get them off to school. People from work helped with meals and things that I needed. So it was definitely not something I entered into alone, which really helped, because whenever I felt down or that I was, those worrisome moments, I knew I had a community to rely on, and different people had different strengths. I had somebody checking medicines online for me because I tried to stay offline and not go into there because of some, there's some things out there that could scare you, right? And so somebody would check for medicine for me, and somebody would make sure that we had meals at our home. And, it was really it was an effort from everybody around the community. And I had fish come in from Alaska. People would bring fish for me, to make sure that I had our food from home. So it wasn't something that I did alone. And that helped me be able to get through it with, everybody's help.
Jamie, you've also talked about hidden costs, financial costs that don't get discussed when it comes to cancer treatment. And one, for example, is just the cost of eating healthier food. Tell me more about some of these hidden costs and how people can manage them in the midst of all the other expenses they're having to deal with in a situation like this.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to people to help support, right? The meals when I was first diagnosed really helped to be able to support to make sure my family and myself were getting healthy meals and things that I could eat. One of my chemos really created mouth sores, and so having to have things through a straw and drink my meals, and so there was additional cost to purchase those things, to purchase the separate food that I would need from my family. My feet, the shoes were really hard for me to wear, certain shoes, and so having to wear comfortable shoes, more like tennis shoes on the day to day or moccasins. And so had a dear friend who made me moccasins that I could wear at conferences. But those weren't things that I thought of initially, right? Like I didn't think, there's the cost for the copayment and the actual medical expenses, but the other things like the lotions or things that you need to put on your hands that I would put on my hands to help with the sores on my hands. Those things all really start to add up. And so helping to support and being okay to say, here's some things that I could use when people ask, helped share that kind of burden.
Jamie, cancer rates remain high, though. That's what's so frustrating here for Native Americans and Alaska Native people. Now, as someone who also works in the national policy sphere, what progress are you seeing to address these higher rates that we're seeing among Indigenous people here in the U.S.?
I mean, the rates are still high, right? Unfortunately. But that's one of the reasons why I was happy and grateful to be able to join the American Indian Cancer Foundation. They share awareness and share resources and make sure people know how to care for their loved ones and support them as well during this difficult time. And as we're going to have to continue to fight for our health and our well-being and connect to our cultural groundings to make sure that people know that those expenses too, participating in, as Shannon said, in ceremony and participating in other ways, there's expenses allotted with that too, to getting to those locations, to getting those medicines and making sure that we can have those help expenses covered as well.
Jamie, one more question, and we're going to move on to our next guest. But what do you tell your boys, especially when they were younger and you first got this diagnosis? What was that conversation like?
I have two wonderful, amazing boys, my husband and I do. They're now in their mid-20s. It wasn't an easy conversation, and they both dealt with it so differently. Our oldest really tried to help take care and pick up the slack, cooking and learning to do those things at such a young age. They were like 8 and 10, I think, at the time that I was diagnosed. And it was hard because we couldn't really talk a lot about the future. One of my big concerns was being able to see them with the numbers that I was given. I wasn't supposed to see them for graduation, right? And I'm very lucky to say that I saw them both graduate from high school. I saw my oldest graduate from college, and my youngest is still in college. But the oldest really picked up some slack in in cooking, and our youngest helped with taking out the garbage and making us laugh and finding the humor in things. When I lost my hair, he wanted to get, crazy clown wigs and took those fake mustaches to put on my eyebrows that I didn't have. And so they both cared for me in different ways. And, but I just reminded them how much I loved them. And also that if things didn't go well in their life, they could always go home. They could always go back to their community in Alaska, to the tribe, to the people, to their family, which they both have recently done just because, there was their time in life to go be there. And so I'm very grateful that they knew that even though they weren't born there, that was a place for them for healing as well.
All right. Jamie Gomez, Tlingit and Haida Foundation Executive Director and American Indian Cancer Foundation Board Member, talking about her experiences undergoing experimental treatment for ovarian cancer. Our next guest, Alicia Mitchell, joins us now from Chandler, Arizona. She is a Partnership for Native American Cancer Prevention board member and also an American Indian Cancer Foundation board member. And Alicia, I want to thank you again for joining the show. And you have been cancer-free for 4 years. And your message, similar to Shannon Martin, is preventative care. Tell me more about what that looks like in your view, and how has your lifestyle changed since you were diagnosed?
Absolutely. Good morning, Sean. Thank you for having me. I know on the intro I just said thank you in my language, but it's an honor to share my story and be here. And if there's any opportunity for me to help even one person, I'll continue to share my story. For me, since receiving a cancer diagnosis, it was 3 days before my 50th birthday. I kind of knew immediately. I knew something was wrong for quite some time, but I continued to ignore my body because I feared hospitals, doctors, because as a tribal member, that's kind of something my family always like, don't go to the doctor and things like that. So it took me 11 months to hear the words, "You have cancer." Once I heard those words, I knew I had no other choice to attack the cancer in a way that would give me longevity. Yes, I'm 4 years cancer free, but every single day it has changed my life and will continue. With our survival rate, I know I'm approaching the 5-year mark, but every single day I have changed my diet substantially. I move my body every day. I eliminated sugar, coffee, alcohol from my diet. I try to eat a whole diet. All of these things that me being in the suburban area has helped, right? So a lot of our tribal members that are in rural areas do not have that luxury being in food deserts. I also fast every week, do a 36-hour fast, just doing anything I can. I did have an invasive cancer that had spread by the time I did hear those words. And I also was going to a tribal facility that continued to understand their patients. They called me 3 times to say, you have these referrals, you need to get your mammogram, you need to get your colonoscopy. And had they not been persistent, understanding their tribal members as their patients, my story could be much different had it been 11 more months. So I did receive a stage 2 invasive lobular carcinoma diagnosis. And within 30 days, I knew I had a double mastectomy, and I knew I had to take drastic measures. So that's when I changed my diet, started moving my body, and eliminated all chemicals from my household products, from my foods, and really leaned into my community. So since that double mastectomy, like I said, I became cancer-free that day. I was lucky enough it did not go into my lymph nodes. And with that, after that was 7 surgeries. So within 3 years, I had 7 surgeries. So when we're talking about also the financial burden of having that many surgeries, that was substantial. Also being a single woman a single woman still am, and a single mom, that was very, very scary to me.
Alicia, you've spoken publicly about your cancer in other forums, and also your son was able to take care of you during surgery. And what are some aspects of cancer, though, that still aren't getting discussed as openly as maybe they should be?
The aspects of cancer, just the burden, I feel like. It was also my daughter that cared for me. I know I had shared that it was, my son, in the fact that at the time I was very angry that my children had to be the ones to care for me. They had to, the burden of giving me a shower, giving me shots. And I felt like at the time that's a space that a spouse should be doing that for you. But the burden of them their lives being put on hold to take me to my appointments, to ensure that I had what I needed to make sure, I get to that 5-year survival rate, but there's so many burdens that come with this type of diagnosis, and the fear. And again, it begins with fear, because I was so fearful to even go in and hear those words, knowing, because I ignored the symptoms to my body. And then now living with the fear every day that it could come back.
Mm-hmm. In 5 years,
Yeah.
That's the critical time period, right? If you can make it 5 years cancer-free or have it in remission, the path forward looks pretty optimistic. Is that right?
Yes. So I just hit January 31st, my 4-year mark. And I, every single day, have that little fear, that, let me get to 5 year, let me get to 5 year. So, and I have spoke as an advocate and a survivor across the valley. And my message would always be, get screened. And now with the work that I'm doing with the Native American Cancer Foundation, and also on the Community Advisory Board for the Partnership for Native American Cancer Prevention, I understand that, it's prevention. And my message is to Indian country and to all of Native Americans to listen to your body, and also understand that it's not to get screened or the early detection as much as it is prevention. And I feel like all of the changes that I have done substantially to make sure it doesn't come back, that's my message. I know that our ancestors would move their bodies from the sun up to the sun down, doing work and farming and gardening and growing our own food. Now we have sedentary jobs, or we're sitting and we're eating processed foods. So I continually advocate that prevention is where, I really, really would like to help in that space.
All right, we're going to take another break. We'll come back. We'll speak more with Alicia Mitchell, and we also have another guest who's going to join us, Nicole Hallingstad. So stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
Support by the Gathering of Nations Powwow. The last dance is this April 24th and 25th at Expo, New Mexico. Gone's last horse rider and regalia parade takes place at 4 p.m. both days. Tickets at gatheringofnations.com and at the gates.
Kaufman & Associates is a Native-owned and led consulting firm, supporting Native communities with culturally grounded solutions to shape Indigenous futures. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
Thank you for tuning in today to Native America Calling. I'm your host, Sean Spruce. We're hearing from a group of diverse women, all who have faced a cancer diagnosis. And new data from the American Cancer Society shows cancer survivability is at an all-time high. Our current guest, Alicia Mitchell, is in Chandler, Arizona. And Alicia, before break, you talked about changing diet. You talked about removing chemicals from your home, processed foods, fasting. But I also want to ask you about exercise, because you're a member of a boat team, and that's a big part of your life as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean. Yes. So in the process of healing from my cancer, I discovered and learned about a dragon boat racing team here in the Valley. Something I have never done or actually really paid attention or heard of. And so it's an entire team of all breast cancer survivors who compete internationally. So all of the women on the team, obviously, when we came out, most of us didn't even have a clue about it. So it's something that we learned. And it's a way to heal our bodies, keep the movement, keep the mobility. All of us have different diagnoses and elements after having cancer. So it's just a great way to have a team and be strong and keep that movement. We are currently training because we're going to compete in France this summer at an all-women's breast cancer competition. So France, we're coming August 2026. So this has become a huge part of my life. Practicing out at Tippytown Lake twice a week and just focusing on moving my body every day. But this has been really life-changing for me to have that team of women supporting each other out on the water. And of course, the connection to the water for our tribal communities, it is definitely medicine to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, heading to France, that's going to be exciting. Alicia, good luck to you and your teammates. We'll be pulling for you all, along with all the guests on the show. This is wonderful. I'm just really feeling inspired and moved by the guests we have on the show and the stories. And we're not done yet because we have another guest who's going to move us as well. Nicole Hallingstad joins us now from Anchorage, Alaska. She is a cancer survivor and advocate. And Nicole, this is really awesome. You spoke with Good Morning America about the barriers Native women face to get cancer treatment. Tell us more about those hurdles in your experience.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for that amazing question. Yes, I did, because I live in the state of Alaska, and so many of our cancer patients live in distant rural communities from the hubs where medical help is available. And I myself followed a fairly unconventional path. I'm a two type of cancer survivor, both breast and ovarian. And I'll start with my breast cancer journey. It was actually discovered by my male cat. And it came as very much a surprise to me. I am something of an ample woman, so there's lots of territory there. And when I got two new little kittens from rescue, the male cat loved to just park up on my chest anytime I was slightly reclined, watching TV, reading a book, and he would just make biscuits, just go to town, just kind of rubbing and rubbing. And it took about 2 weeks for it to start to consciously sink in. Boy, he's really paying attention to something in there. And so one day, after a sort of a rigorous play session, I lifted him up and started feeling where he was playing. And much to my surprise, because I had never felt it, was about a 5 centimeter. It was already the size of a ripe plum tumor in my right breast. And this was in July of 2007, and I had had a clear mammogram on both sides in January of 2007. So I was doing my screenings. I was paying attention, but it came on so quickly. My little kitty cat was the one who found it first. And so of course, it launches 1,000 jokes about a different type of CAT scan and how lucky I was to have my own CAT scan in my house. But he did, in fact, alert me to the breast tumor. And I went through 2 lumpectomies and had some lymph nodes removed. And thankfully, at that time, it was not present in my lymph system. But I had to leave town. At this time, I lived in Juneau, Alaska, which is the capital of our state. And in 2007, you could not get chemotherapy treatment in Juneau, Alaska. So knowing that I was going to have to leave, I had a few choices. I could go north to Anchorage to a Native medical center there, or I could go south to Seattle. And very fortunately for me, my employer at the time had a Seattle office location. So if I went to Seattle, I could continue my job and continue working through my treatment. So that's the option I chose. But what that meant was having to support dual households. I still had, a house in Juneau, and then I had to find a place to live in Seattle. And so I ended up renting an apartment there. And that was a significant financial burden. Going back to what Jamie said, there are so many hidden expenses that you just don't even anticipate because the diagnosis itself is so overwhelming. So I got my treatment in Seattle and thankfully returned to Juneau about a year later, cancer-free, and I've remained breast cancer-free to this day. But what I did discover was that I do have the BRCA1 mutation. I have a genetic mutation that is very often assigned to breast cancers. And it meant that I could be likely to develop ovarian cancer later in life. But, I also want to bring up something that Alicia said about living with that fear of cancer coming back, because every day after you've been diagnosed, it is the first thing on your mind when you wake up and the thing you're still thinking about when you go to sleep. And you live for that day when it's not the first thing that comes to mind about you. And I was lucky enough to reach that point. I had gotten, 7, 8 years clear, and it just wasn't top of mind anymore, which is a really lovely place to be. You mentioned survival rates going up, and I was fortunate to be in that category. But then I started experiencing some other symptoms. And again, as Jamie, can attest, many symptoms of ovarian cancer don't really get tagged as cancer until you're in later stages of it. And this is so important, Sean. You asked earlier, what do we openly discuss? But sometimes what do we fail to discuss when it comes to cancer? In the women's groups that I've spoken with, in the advocacy that I've done, in testimony that I've heard, women often have a real tendency to play off some of their symptoms as just regular stressors of life. Oh, gosh, if I have this headache, it'll go away in a couple of days. If my back hurts, I lifted my daughter maybe in a weird position. With ovarian cancer, you get bloating in your abdomen. You feel very full after a small meal. There's pain and discomfort. But we tend to write that off as usual experiences that women have. And I'll never forget, I thought to myself, well, this is what you get. You have a stressful job right now. You take that extra blueberry muffin for breakfast and maybe that extra slice of pie after dinner, and, you're going to get a bigger belly. And the truth of it is, and some of your listeners might relate to this, I fat-shamed myself into a late diagnosis because I just thought it was my body's response to how I was treating it. And my doctors, unfortunately, because I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, they just did not put together my medical records. And I feel a certain amount of responsibility to myself. I didn't make the connection to ovarian cancer quite either. We had cervical ultrasounds and pap smears, and I knew something was wrong, but we just didn't put the dots together until I came back to Alaska. And at that time, I was living in a community called Bethel, which is off the road system. And that might be something that your callers are used to hearing. But imagine, living in a community where you can't drive out. You can't connect to your medical care by just driving to it. And I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at stage 3 in December of 2019. And again, somewhat unconventionally, it was the night before my husband and I were due to fly out for a 2-week cruise. And instead, I got diagnosed in the emergency room the night before we were supposed to leave. So we spent those 2 weeks instead in Seattle in emergency, full open belly hysterectomy surgery and recovery. And of course, when I came back from my trip, everybody was like, "Oh, how was your trip? How was vacation? And I had to explain that it wasn't quite the trip that I had planned.
And if I'm not mistaken, this was during like the height of the COVID lockdown too when this all occurred. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And I had to travel between Bethel and Anchorage to get my chemotherapy every 3 weeks. And this would have been between January and June of 2020. We were at the height of the initial COVID scare. There was so much fear, so much anxiety and uncertainty. I flew for my first trip over with my husband, but that was the only time he could come with me. I could not bring support. I could not have anyone with me for the other 6 trips that I made. And I'm flying with full protective gear in, half empty airplanes coming to a town that is just a ghost town where everybody's indoors, you never see anybody, and all of my healthcare professionals are just draped in personal health protective gear. It was so terrifying, so isolating, and so lonely. It was just an extra burden you didn't imagine that you would have to find the strength for. But of course you do, and I am now myself in remission 6 years out, and am grateful every day, even though it was a terrifying experience. My message to any listeners is to speak up. You are your best advocate. You know the information about yourself, but don't be deterred. If you get sent home with instructions that you feel aren't going to treat what's wrong with you, go back. Speak up firmer. Make sure your medical team is listening to you. There is a tendency in Native communities to not want to talk about cancer because we understand the weight and the power of words in our world. And there is a sense of not wanting to conjure something by putting a name to it. And frankly, Sean, the silence is killing us. The silence is killing us because we're not talking enough about what symptoms look and feel like, what kind of treatment we need, the support, back to Alicia's point, the burden we feel like we're placing. Shannon said it, listen to your body. And I just add to that, be your best advocate. Speak up until you feel what is wrong is actually being treated.
Okay. Nicole, one more quick question, then I want to bring Alicia back in to talk a little bit about policy. The cat who initially helped you,
Yes.
How's he doing? Is he okay?
He was okay for a very long time. He immediately graduated medical school from the University of Nicole, and I called him Dr. Rudy through the rest of my treatment. He gave me comfort. He made his biscuits. He sat on my cold head when I was bald. He was amazing. He passed just a year ago at 18 and was just a wonderful companion.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nicole. Alicia Mitchell, back to you. We just heard Nicole talking about, we're not talking about this. There's a stigma here. We're not doing more to advocate. So I'm curious because you are involved a lot with prominent cancer foundations and organizations. And what are you seeing done on the advocacy side and the treatment side to address some of these issues with cancer in our Native communities? We've got about a minute before we have to wrap up, but you've got the rest of the show, Alicia.
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much. So, yeah, absolutely. The work that I'm doing, we're definitely looking within the communities within the state of Arizona to see what research needs to be done, because that research is going to lead the charge for this policy change. So me coming into that board this January, it's new for me, but it's such an honor to be in that space as an advocate, as a survivor, and someone that, as Nicole said, we're fearful of what we say and what we call it. That is why also I never said I was fighting cancer. I was never battling cancer. I had chosen to say I was loving my body back to health, because we don't want to conjure in those things But back to policy really quick. Again, the spaces that I'm in, it is providing us to really take a deep look at what we're not talking about so we can address that through research that is going to drive that policy change.
All right. And with that, we're out of time. But before we wrap up, I want to thank all four of our guests today. Every one of them absolutely wonderful. Alicia Mitchell, Nicole Hallingstad, Jamie Gomez, and Shannon Martin. We're back tomorrow. We'll be talking about efforts to change voting rules that could affect the ability of millions of voters to cast their ballots. Have a great day. I'm Sean Spruce.
Tribal Development Partners, supporting tribal sovereignty through 105L leasing and essential infrastructure development. Tribal Development Partners will attend RES 2026 in booth 303 and are proud to support this show.
Support from Davis Keelan Law Firm, a New Mexico firm standing with Native families suffering catastrophic loss. When tragedy strikes Indian country, we fight to restore stability, dignity, and justice. Bringing a voice to Native families and communities for 20 years. More information, daviskeelan.com.
Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
The 30th Annual Alaska Native Art Auction, celebrating Indigenous artists and voices, takes place Saturday, March 21st. Corporate sponsorship opportunities are available. Information at kmba.org.